Something I've been thinking about a lot recently is whether or not Terraria should expand past Moonlord. It's been nearly a whole decade since this boss got added to the game, and despite countless updates, it has remained the final boss for all that time. I think that there are pros and cons to expanding past Moonlord with new boss fights, so let's start by talking about the reasons that it might not be a good idea, the cons. Moonlord has been the final boss of the game for such a long time that it might be unreasonable to move past it now just for novelty's sake. Whenever somebody thinks of Terraria's endgame, they think of Moonlord, and a lot of people just wouldn't get used to a new final boss. Moonlord being the finale also works very well within the lore. Terraria lore is kind of weird and inconsistent in general, but something that everybody kind of understands is that Moonlord is meant to be like Cthulhu. Bosses like the Eye of Cthulhu and Brain of Cthulhu are part of the Moonlord's body, and so having Moonlord be the final boss just makes sense. It's kind of a culmination of every single boss you fought in the past. And at the end of the day, getting post-Moonlord boss fights is very unlikely to happen. While Terraria is still getting content updates every now and then, the overall progression of the game has been largely untouched since 1.3. The game is ultimately finished. To be completely honest though, when it comes to the quality of the game as a whole, I don't see a lot of reasons to keep Moonlord as the final boss anymore. So now I think it's a good time to start talking about the benefits of moving forward. The biggest reason I would like to see more post-Moonlord content is that it could make the progression system way more beginner friendly. Terraria is constantly called a wiki game because of how difficult it is for new players to understand what to do in it, but it wasn't always like that. Terraria back in 1.2 and even 1.3 was actually so much easier to pick up and learn. It wasn't the easiest game to get the hang of, but somebody could make a lot of progress without ever seeking out the wiki. I genuinely think that the biggest reason Terraria is harder to learn now is because there is so much content. That might sound weird, but hear me out. With Moonlord being the final boss for 10 years, every new update has made the pre-existing progression system even more complicated. Having so many different weapons and armor sets and accessories and items in general can be really good for replay value, but really bad for new players. If Terraria expanded past Moonlord, they could add just as much new content while not making the previous progression more complicated. Having a bunch of content crammed into every stage of the game is better than the game feeling empty, but neither option is ideal. Another reason I would want a different final boss is because, quite frankly, Moonlord isn't great. It's not a horrible boss, but it's definitely not one of the best. A lot of the projectiles are unpredictable and annoying, the music isn't impressive at all, and the build-up with the celestial pillars is irritating. It's way too easy on classic mode, but has a crazy difficulty spike in expert and master mode. Moonlord simply doesn't deliver as a final boss like it should. I go back and forth on whether I like this boss fight, but the more I play Terraria, the less I enjoy it. And the final main reason I think there should be a boss past Moonlord is because the gear that you get after beating Moonlord is so interesting and fun, yet there are no challenging boss fights to use these items on. Maybe this is an inevitable problem that comes with the end of the game, but I would love to be able to use items like the Star Wrath on a real challenging boss fight. I think one of the biggest appeals to the Calamity mod, for example, is the fact that it lets you test the really cool Moonlord loot on new bosses. Even if there was simply a boss rush or a hidden boss meant to be insanely hard, it would be a really cool addition after Moonlord. At the end of the day, I do think that Terraria should either expand past Moonlord or move on to a new game. New updates are great, and 1.4.5 is really exciting, but the amount of content in every stage of Terraria at this point is insane. For reference, during 1.3, when Moonlord first got added to Terraria, the game had around 3,000 items in total, which was already a lot. Now, even with Moonlord still being the final boss, Terraria has over 5,000 items. I don't even care about Moonlord as a boss fight in itself. I just believe that the overall progression of Terraria has become pretty cluttered, and so expanding no matter what would be very beneficial. Do you agree with what I've said in this video, or do you disagree? Let me know in the comments section, and as always, remember to subscribe to the channel for more Terraria discussions. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.